For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kristina, and I am the CEO and founder of Fictionary. I created Fictionary from nothing to what it is today, and now we're a community and we have events and we're software and we're Fictionary Live. And we have certification training and we do edits and all kinds of things. So it's very exciting here at Fictionary these days. Today, however, we are here to talk about the story arc scenes in a fantasy novel. So my next question to everybody, who's already writing a fantasy? If you type a one in the chat, yes, you're writing a fantasy. Lots. Okay, good. That's perfect. Science fiction, which is a cousin, yet that is correct, Walter. And we've talked about the similarities a little bit before. Do paranormal thrillers count? Absolutely, James. And we're going to talk about why. Because in a paranormal thriller, you're going to have two story arcs, one for the paranormal and one for the thriller, which of course makes it thrilling. Sorry, I had to say that. So again, I just want to remind everybody, kindness is our thing. That means kindness to yourself, kindness to other writers in the community. And by kindness, I don't mean weakness. I mean actually just being thoughtful and nice to people. And when you have critiques that we're sharing with each other, when we look at each other's works, helpful, positive, but still helping the person make their story better. Who am I? So for those of you who don't know me, I write the Novels That Sell series, Secrets to Editing Success, Secrets to Writing a Series, and Secrets to Outlining a Novel. And these are our companion books to the Fictionary Live course. I'm an award-winning fiction author. I'm a structural editor, which I love to do. And I'm the CEO and founder of Fictionary. And here, so our passion at Fictionary is story structure. That's our thing. And our other goal at Fictionary is not just teaching the story structure, but to have a place where everybody can go in the Ask an Editor section of the community to learn about whatever it is you want to ask. We have professional editors there who answer questions. So that's the quick on me. Coming up, and neither Lisa, Linda, or Lucy are here today. So 3 books coming out to go with our courses that we have. So Secrets to Writing a Fantasy, Secrets to Writing a Romance, and then Secrets to Writing a Mystery. We're going to develop a course at the same time. Alrighty, now we're going to get right to fantasy. So let's talk about the high-level genre first. The story is about an adventure, typically, and that's the external plot in the story. So this may be the thriller part of the paranormal thriller. So there's going to be an external plot that the protagonist is going to try and achieve their goal. There will be supernatural elements. So if there's not supernatural elements, it's not a fantasy. There must be magic, dragons, anything that doesn't exist basically in our world today, excluding technology. And then you're over in the sci-fi realm of things. This is something that we've got all kinds of monsters, we've got elves, we've got all kinds of magic, including paranormal things, ghosts, etc. It has specific story arc requirements for the external plot related to the supernatural plot. And we're going to talk through these. It needs a supernatural story arc. And this is why people read fantasy. They want to know what is happening on the fantasy side of things. So when we talk about fantasy, the reader is going to assume that the natural laws of Earth don't apply, right? In science fiction, the natural laws apply, but there's technology that doesn't exist today. Really, fantasy is taking the reader on an adventure. Horror is intended to really frighten the reader. And if anyone knows Brandy, our one of our Fictionary Live instructors who writes horror, she has dead bodies everywhere. And then science fiction is intended to intrigue the reader with technology. There's universal scenes that the reader expects to be in a fantasy story. And we'll talk about some of these. I mean, we can't go into all of them because there's a lot, but we'll give you a view. First of all, let's just talk about the generic story arc for anyone who's not familiar with it. And this is where we talk about the inciting incident. So for any story, it doesn't matter what genre you're writing, there will be an inciting incident. And this is just a shakeup in the protagonist's world. It can happen before the story starts. It can happen anywhere up to 15%-ish. These percentages I'm going to give you are all, flexible. If you don't have an inciting incident, there's no story because we're just looking at somebody's ordinary world. There must be one somewhere. And when you read a book or watch something on Netflix or whatever, and you're thinking, oh, what's happening here? It's usually because there's no inciting incident at the beginning. Then somewhere between 20 and 30%, the protagonist accepts the story goal. And they must accept the story goal or they're not doing anything and there's no story. They have to have a goal and they have to accept it. Even if it's reluctantly or partially, or they don't really know they're accepting it, you as the writer have to know they're actually accepting it. In the middle point, the protagonist gets proactive. Before that, they have been active, but reacting to things. And if they don't get proactive, they don't drive the story toward the climax. They can't control it. It just goes all over the place and the story will never end. So this is why that's in there. Plot point 2 is my favorite because it has 2 things. It's the worst moment for the protagonist. And they also get their final piece of information they need, whatever that is, to achieve the story goal at the climax. At some point, they have to get that final piece of information or they can never achieve the story goal, in which case the story is never over. And then in the climax, they must address the story goal. So if the story goal, if it's not addressed in the climax, the story is not over. Even if you're writing a series, there needs to be a book story goal. So with this, these are, we call them scenes, but it could be 3 scenes. It could be 1 sentence within a scene. It could be several paragraphs. These are functions when we're talking about it. All right, so I'm gonna just bump over to the app for a second. So on the bookshelf, for those of you who are just starting a fantasy and don't know where to start, you can click, so I'm just over here on the bookshelf. You can click outline and write a novel. And when you do that, you have a choice of outline. So no outline, romance, series, universal just means a generic one. You're not fixed on a genre yet, but you still need the key scenes, or fantasy, which is what we'll do today. And we're just going to call it Fantasy Class. That's a good name for this very exciting novel I'm writing right now. And what this does for you is this puts in an outline on the side here with all of the reader expected scenes in a fantasy novel. In the notes section, which is just over here, we explain what all of those scenes are. If we look at plot and we look at the purpose of a scene, you can see the purpose all the way through here, so you can follow through and see what you're trying to do with your story. Plot, if we look at the scene name, we just click here. We get our story outline, and this shows you all of the scenes in the context of the story arc scenes. And so you get a baseline for your story. And as you're writing, you just do your writing here and everything updates as you go. These are all here to help you. They don't need to be in this order. So I want to be very clear about that. Your supernatural inciting incident could come before the external inciting incident. The external could come before the book starts, for example, and be told in backstory. These are about having these functions in your story. And so when you have them there, you're creating a fantasy. All right, so this is where it gets fun. So we're going to talk about fantasy specific story arcs. So in a fantasy novel, there's going to be 2 clear stories. One is story arcs. So this just lines right up with what I told you for the generic. So in a fantasy, usually there's some kind of challenge to the protagonist from an external force. And so and I'll go through a book so I can show you exactly what these are, but this is a challenge for them. And for anybody who's doing a different genre, like a thriller, the inciting incident could be, if we think of Jason Bourne, that's when he shot and knocked off the boat. That's his external. And pretend there's a fantasy in that book. Then we have the adventure accepted. So whatever this challenge is, there's going to be a plot point scene where they accept that adventure. So it depends what the challenge is. They accept that adventure. And then at the middle, there's going to be a false victory or defeat. And obviously this is going to cause a hardship for them. So this goes on top of them. This false victory or defeat is going to cause them to go proactive for whatever reason. Typically in a fantasy plot point 2, it's dark. Bad stuff is happening. And it's something that's really, really difficult for the protagonist. And usually there's some force on the other side that is, now I want to say Luke used the force, but there's an evil force on the other side that is taking them down to their bottom part in their plot point two moment. And then in the external climax, they achieve the goal or they don't. That question must be answered for the external story arc. Then we have the supernatural story arc. And here, same thing. So the inciting incident is the shakeup in their world. So in this case, in a fantasy, it's an inkling that the supernatural exists, or they use it for the first time, something new about it. There's something that changes in their world related to the supernatural. Maybe it's the first time they see a werewolf, for example, that they didn't know was there before. It's their first shakeup, but it must be related to the supernatural, whatever the supernatural is in the story. Then we have plot point one, and this is where they actually either believe in it if they didn't believe in it before, or they use it in some way. And so they've accepted that they're supernatural and they're going to need that to reach their goal. And then they proactively use the supernatural at the middle plot point. So something happens where they use a piece of magic or they fight off a werewolf or whatever it is. This is where that happens. In plot point two, what they learn is there's a limitation to their supernatural. They cannot be all powerful because if they are, the reader will know that they're going to win. So there has to be doubt in the reader's mind. And the way to do this is, quite often when they use their magic, they lose energy or somebody near them gets hurt or there's some limitation every time they use the magic, whatever magic is. And then in the climax, they have to use the supernatural to win. So there's something about the supernatural that they're either fighting the supernatural or they are using the supernatural, being their magic or creatures or whatever it is. And that's how they get to their climax. All right, so when we put these together, it gets very interesting. So the first thing when you're writing your fantasy, you're going to weave these things together. And anyone who's been through the Fictionary Live Outline course knows that we talk about creating a main event for each of these. And when you have your main events, just a one sentence of what happens, not how, not why, just what, then you can look at which one has to come before the other. And the only sort of strong guidelines here are the inciting, they have to happen in order. So an inciting incident always happens before plot point one, always happens before middle plot point, etc. Unless, of course, if you're writing a dual timeline where you're going past and present, you can mix them up, but you need to know what they are before you can do anything. Before I cover the books, I just want to talk about in Fictionary Live, we've got a new course starting not until February, but in January, we're going to have a kickstart and get people going and working on their outline so they're ready before they start the course. And anyone who's coming to this 30 minutes, what I would like to do is offer a copy of the ebook of Secrets to Writing a Fantasy in exchange for an honest review on Amazon or Goodreads, whatever your preference. That gives you a head start by the time you start the course on, I think it's February 5th. All right, so in the book, these are the books, and I'm going to look at Fourth Wing in a minute to show you the story arcs. But in Secrets to Writing a Fantasy, we break out these 6 books. So give me, if you've read one of the books, give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I want to see who's read how many of these books. All right, so we take these books and we show you every reader expected scene for each of these books and how the author uses them and when they use them and how they weave them into both story arcs. And we chose these books. First, they're commercially successful. Second, they're a wide range of Fourth Wing is super high on magic. The Unbroken is the other end of the spectrum, and it's very low on magic. It's a military fantasy, but it does have magic. Twilight, it's structurally perfect, so we love to show that one. Game of Thrones is a group protagonist, so that's really the hardest one, so we wanted to show those. And then A Court of Thorns and Roses and Legendborn kind of fit in the middle, where our goal is to really show you not just what the theory is, but then this is how it applies, and then you can go from there. So let's look at Fourth Wing. All right. So this is the first book in Fourth Wing. This is the external story arc. And Violet's external skeleton blurb is Violet must use her intelligence to fight other students in the Riders Quadrant. Otherwise, she won't survive her first year as a cadet. So that's the blurb that I wrote for her after reading the story. The author may have a totally different one. This is the blurb that I wrote. Violet's external inciting incident. So she needs to live. That's basically what she has to do. And before the story starts, her lovely mother, who is the general, has decided that she will no longer be a scribe. She's trained to be a scribe and work in a library and study. That's what she does for her entire life. She's now 20. And her mother said, okay, in 6 months, you're actually not going to be a scribe. You're going to go up to Warriors College. You're going to ride dragons and fight battles. Okay, so there's the inciting incident. It's not good for Violet. She just thinks, all right, so I'm dead. She's a very little person. She has no strength. She has no fight training. Looks bad for Violet. So her external thing is just survive. At 50%, she poisons him, but she lets him live, which is her mistake. She shouldn't. At 70%, she kills him using her magic. And this is her lowest plot point because she didn't want to kill anyone. Up until this point, she's tried to kill no one. And then at 87%, she wins the battle. So that's her external. Now, what we're all here to look at is what is the supernatural part? So here we have the skeleton blurb for the supernatural is Violet must learn to control her signet. Otherwise, she can't protect Navari's borders from evil mythical creatures, and all inside the borders will die. So a signet is just the magic that she has through her dragon. Some of the cadets can read minds, some can create fire, some can create shadows. There's all kinds of things. She doesn't know what hers is, but if she can't learn it and control it, she's out. So she thinks up to this point, she has no control over magic. She's just there. And at 10% in, her love interest, dragon, who at this point she thinks is trying to kill her, breathes fire on her. And these dragons breathe fire on many of the cadets, and the ones who run die. And so she figures out, using her intelligence, if she stands there and doesn't move, the dragon's going to just sort of snuff at her and go over to the next person. And so she hasn't accepted the story goal. She still thinks she's going to die, but she's figured out, all right, she can actually control magic a little bit. The thrusting ceremony is where she bonds with two dragons, and she has to bond with the dragon in order to get her signet. And this is her, once she bonds, she can't move back. So she has to go forward. She has now accepted that she's going to try to survive. If she doesn't survive, her dragon might not survive, her love interest might not survive. So she has to now accept the goal of surviving. And then in the middle, she uses the supernatural. She stops time. She has no control over it. It just happens. And here she figures out, all right, if she can't control it, she's going to start hurting people. So of course, in plot point 2, she kills Jack she gets her signet. So that's her piece of information she gets. Its limitation is that it exhausts her and she can't control it. And she kills Jack, not really meaning to. So she's killed a person and she's at her lowest point, knowing she can't control her magic. And then in the battle, she controls her magic and she uses it to win the battle with her team. Now, there's a whole bunch of depth in there behind this, but that is the general story arc for the 2. So if you want to do more, we have February 5th, the Fictionary Live course starts. You can sign up either through the community or if you're a Storyteller Premium. And the Kickstart will lead into this and take you through creating all of the scenes that you need to actually do your own story. And then for those of you who are here, but went through Fictionary last year, we've put up almost the full schedule for Fictionary Live to the end of the year. We have our instructors, we have all the classes, everything's ready to go. And we're going to try something a little bit new. And we're going to try it with the Story Foundations course, which is the outlining course. And you can certainly take that before taking the fantasy course so that you're ready with the generic scenes of how to outline. And what we've added in here, well, we have the books, of course. We've added in a podcast type function, which basically is like a 10-minute conversation about each of the classes, summarizing the theory so that you can do the class, which we don't record, but this will be there recorded. And then we're also putting recorded videos in so that you can see videos on the theory. And the pieces that we don't record are the live classes where we are actually talking about people's work. And so we don't want to record that. We want that so we're going to try it. And we've added in a live write-in behind the outlining course. So basically we're going to go, these are the scenes, and the next day we'll spend an hour together writing one. Next week, next one, spend an hour writing one. So this is a beta to see, does this work better for people? If yes, great. If no, then we'll try something else. But we want to keep trying things to make this more accessible and easier for everybody. Okay, so that is fantasy in 25 minutes. It's a huge topic to cover, but super high level, just to give everybody a little bit of an idea. Alrighty, everybody have a lovely rest of your day wherever you are in the world. Different time zones for everyone, which is fantastic. And thank you to everybody who came off video today. I really appreciate it. It makes it much lovelier for me. And a hand from Bandy. Okay, bye everybody.